Toxic shame sounds like the worst two words in the English language put together. The more you hate that phrase, the more toxic shame you probably have. When the ego is very threatened by any kind of extreme vulnerability, it just kicks it to the curb. That defense is functional. Mostly it works. So we're going to watch a clip of Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm pretty neutral on her, I'll just say. She is a woman who has a very, very strong ego. And it's very, very helpful to hear her. This is her reaction to Epstein survivors. These poor women, by the way. Yeah. These poor women. Right. Raped. They went in front of the biggest press conference I've ever seen in Washington and stood in front of cameras, shaking, okay, terrified. So shaking, terrified. So she's a great example, and this is a functioning ego. So Marjorie Taylor Greene's ego is functioning and it is protecting her. So she says things like they're shaking, terrified, and kind of does an impression. I don't know that I would ever, before I was healed of trauma, by the way, I'm an SRA survivor. I don't know that I would ever like do an impression of someone shaking like a leaf in that way, but I might have thought it. I might have thought they look way too vulnerable and I'm out. So that's what the ego does. So, um, and to be clear, her ego is keeping her alive. Okay, it's functioning actually really well because she is in Congress. Well, she was at the time of that recording. That's on Tim Dillon, and I believe she's no longer. So the ego is like this security guard. The ego is removing any threat. It's got to kick out all that toxic shame. All it knows how to do is kick toxic shame away. It cannot integrate it. And it's right to do that. So we have here an infographic. So if you're just listening, on the screen, it's a spectrum. On the left is detached, on the right is attached. Okay, so in toxic relationships, and this is specific to relationships, detached is strength, attached is weakness. So with someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's in Congress, I would say that there are a lot of toxic relationships that that woman has to deal with. So on the left, detached will read as strength, and she will get rewarded for that detachment. In toxic environments and specifically toxic relationships, the more detached, the stronger your position. And then in healthy relationships, it's different. It's not exactly opposite. So in healthy relationships, on the left is detached, it reads as dead. On the right is attached, it reads as alive. So when healthy people view toxic relationships, they see a lot of dead people. They see a lot of very deadpan behavior. Um, so as an SRA survivor, I grew up around tons of narcissists and sociopaths. So the dead tone is it's coded as strength. So that's what healthy people never really read, and it could really benefit you, especially in the corporate world, Congress, tech, medicine, etc. So healthy relationships are attached and they're alive. You could think about like a romantic relationship. If both of you are totally detached from each other, it's just not very, it's dead. It's the marriage is dead. And if you're attached, you're alive, you're living together, you're actually connecting. So the ego assesses the threat level immediately. So I want to reiterate, Marjorie Taylor Greene is correct in a toxic environment. Okay. So she's doing it right. Um, I don't want to knock detachment. You know, detachment works. Toxic environments can come up for all of us. So a good example is if I'm in the park and I'm walking my dog, um, we have a lovely attached time. If the dog runs into little children, the dog is attached, the children are attaching. They're having this lovely, alive, attached experience. And then all of a sudden, then a Karen comes up and says, "Hey, your dog is sniffing too much." Nope, that's toxic. That's not a thing. She made up a rule she's trying to enforce. Okay, so we jump to the toxic relationship, and I have to detach. I have to detach from Karen. I have to be really cool, calm, and collected. And I have to, sometimes I just ignore Karens or I stare at them like I don't speak English. Seriously, seriously, the more you detach from the toxic, the stronger. Whereas in a healthy environment, it doesn't look like strength. It looks like you're like a dead person. Okay. So I'd like to I'd like to highlight Marjorie Taylor Greene's survival skills. However, of course, if we never process toxic shame, we stay in survival mode. We don't really reach the alive, thriving that people are put on earth to do, I'm going to say. So it's all well and good to say detach in toxic relationships and attach to healthy relationships. But how do you process your own visceral reaction to toxic shame? And now we're going to visit Kristin Neff.
Shame is one of the hardest human emotions to experience. We all experience it at one time or another, but it's so painful. When we feel shame, we feel completely unlovable. We feel intrinsically flawed and inadequate, and we feel like we're completely unacceptable in the eyes of others. And of course, that fear of rejection from others often makes that feeling of shame go underground. It's too hard to face it. And so when it goes underground into our subconscious, it can start causing problems, lead to behaviors like addiction, for instance, or other maladaptive behaviors that are ways to avoid facing feelings of shame. So it's really important that we find a way to look at shame and to hold it and to be with it in a healthier way. And research shows that one of the most effective ways to work with shame is with self-compassion. So self-compassion actually dismantles shame. And if we want to understand why, we just need to look at the three components of self-compassion, which are mindfulness, being aware of what we're feeling as opposed to being identified with it, over-identification, a sense of a kindness and warmth as opposed to harsh judgment, and feelings of common humanity, of connection to others as opposed to feeling isolated. So when we are in a moment of shame, typically there's no self-compassion there. We feel completely identified with the thought, I am bad, with that emotion that I'm unacceptable, unlovable. We feel harshly judgmental of ourselves. And we feel completely cut off and isolated from our fellow human beings. We often feel unhuman, not even worthy of the basic sense of human kindness. So when we move into self-compassion, it actually allows us to be with ourselves in a moment of shame in a new way.
So self-compassion would be required to dismantle all of that toxic shame. And most people do not have it. Okay, most people are like Marjorie Taylor Greene. They see the threat of toxic shame and they simply manage the threat. And that's fine for survival. So I'll go back to my graphic. So it's fine to simply manage your own survival. However, what Dr. Kristin Neff is talking about is pretty sophisticated. So what she's suggesting is that you're mindful. You actually are aware that these survivors of extreme abuse are kind of triggering you. So just admitting that, that's a big step. And I think a lot of people would have a hard time with that. Then the kindness and warmth. I don't think a lot of people even have that, but most people have an inner critic. So people are used to living up here in this toxic, we're going back to this spectrum, detached versus attached. People are used to detaching. And then the third step was equanimity. So understanding that we are all having a human experience, basically. And I think people understand that conceptually, but what Dr. Neff is talking about is actually integrating it into the ego. So that's incredibly sophisticated. So if you're trying to do that work, understand that other people will never do it. Other people are not going to join you. So the best way to stay safe out there is to really deepen your healthy relationship with you. And then outside, you have this inside outside relationship. And then outside, work, fake friends, neighbors, Karens. That's where you can completely detach. And I would totally shamelessly go back and forth, right? So back to the healthy relationship inside my own mind, body, heart, and then recognizing, oh, I get an email. Detach. And then recognizing something toxic outside of myself. Then, if I am sharing as an SRA survivor, I very much detach from that. So, like, let's say someone did a weird impression of me and claimed I was shaking like a leaf. I'm detaching from that, aren't I? I will detach. Yes, I will. So, this is an actual functioning way to move from the toxic shame. If you actually want to process this toxic shame, it is like sludge, and you need the cleanser of self-compassion to wash it away and wash it away slowly. And this would be the process. Let me know what you think.